709 Reasons Why is brought to you by Calman.
Hi, I'm David from Portrait Displays, and welcome to another episode of 709 Reasons Why. Today, I'm here with Steven, the CEO of Admesy. How are you doing today, Steven?
Very well, thanks.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can you tell our viewers a little more about Admesy? Like, what is your history? What's your passion? How did you guys get started?
Well, our company was founded in 2006, and we actually come from a background of engineers making displays for Philips. And so back in the time, there was the color displays on mobile phones, like with full 24 colors.
Okay.
And they were managing the production lines, and so they needed test equipment in the production line. That's where the idea came from, to found a company dedicated on like calibration systems, measurement systems, luminance meters, colorimeters, targeted initially mostly at production lines. And over the years, we grew into multiple applications. And so we started moving from the production lines to AV calibrations and all kinds of crazy stuff with our spectrometers as well.
So you started with the manufacturer having a need, and you solved the need, and then you scaled up from that manufacturer further on out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And what products have you brought with you today? I see we have a couple of products here on the table.
These are new ones, and this is literally 2015 models, right? I think this one is 1 week old, and this one is 1 month old. Okay. It's the PCM series. It's actually the next generation of our Prometheus model, which some of them out there already know. And we redesigned what we call the optical engine, which is the way in the colorimeter you split the light into the 3 CIE channels, to optimize it much more. So we're using much more of the light, virtually no light loss inside, and that means the device is much more sensitive and much faster.
Okay, so these are the evolution of your current products, giving us much more sensitivity and much more speed in their measurement. But what about the other products? Are you still keeping those older products in line? Can you talk a little bit about the whole product line?
Yeah, so if you look at the product line from a measurement perspective, on the one hand, you have like luminance meters, like our Prometheus LF. You have the colorimeters, so you still have the Hyperion and the Prometheus series, and then this new one, the PCM2 series. And then we have the spectrometers, where you have the Hera and also the Prometheus Viewfinder and the Neo. And we always keep them, we try to update a generational update every 3 to 4 years. But we always keep the other generations going for like some more years, because we know that people are used to them, or they want to buy the same one they already have, which makes perfect sense.
Sure.
And so that's why they're still there, don't worry.
And light measurement, in general, at least in my experience, and maybe my experience is incorrect, but it doesn't seem like we have breakthroughs very quickly in light measurement devices. A lot of manufacturers seem to hold those devices on the market for many years, whereas like a new iPhone comes out every year, but a spectroradiometer or a colorimeter usually has a little bit more of a shelf life. Is that correct?
It is, but I sometimes also joke when people say about, like, for example, a spectrometer, where they say like, oh, you invented a new spectrometer. Well, not really. I mean, Newton invented that principle, right? So it's been a while. It's been around for quite a while. And so as a manufacturer, what you continuously try to do is make steps and go like, okay, can I make it faster? Can I make it more accurate? Can I make it more stable? But the main principles generally don't change. And also, like in this situation, for example, the previous models, the Hyperion and Prometheus, they split the light via a multi-core fiber. And this is more of a generational change, because we really reinvented that part of the device.
Okay.
And so, but for the next couple of years, this will continue to be evolving, because the next generational change is probably quite far away.
So you were talking about the multi-bundle fiber.
Yeah.
And I think I've talked with some of your team about your sensors are unique to yourselves, or the filters are unique to Admesy. You're manufacturing them yourselves or developing them yourselves?
Yeah, we to some extent we're tech geeks, right?
Sure.
And so we started making the devices, and we were purchasing the filters. But we found that to get like really good filters, you need to match them to the rest of the device. So you need to be fully able to control that. And then in 2020, we went all in and we bought an ion beam coder. And so we spent with some of our filters are in the ion beam coder for 3 days straight, trying to get this very, very accurate perfection in the curves, and that helps. That's basically the reason why you get like very, very good color accuracy.
So that would be something unique to Admesy, where you're developing and you're manufacturing your own filter sets that are designed for the sensors you're using and the optics you're using.
I consider that definitely one of our core technologies in the company.
Okay, interesting. And can you tell, we get this question a lot, and I have a spectroradiometer myself and a colorimeter myself, but can you talk a little bit about your perspective on the differences between a spectroradiometer and a colorimeter, and then who each one might be for? Like, why would you buy a spectroradiometer or a colorimeter, or maybe you need both?
Traditionally, a lot of people would probably think like the spectrometer is more accurate. Right, like that had been like for many years sort of the traditional view, and it's like the colorimeter might be less accurate. I don't believe that's true. I mean, it might have been true 15, 20 years ago. At the moment, it's not, because these filters have evolved so far. Like from a color point, the accuracy is the same. I generally say the colorimeter is sort of your workhorse of the industry. I mean, it's a very fast device, it's stable, it's not as sensitive to temperature changes, for example. Generally, it's also more robust. So what we see in, for example, the large consumer electronics companies, they tend to use these kind of devices, the colorimeters, in the production lines, also because they're faster than the spectrometers. They will be using the spectrometers, for example, in the quality line. So if you have like a defect, to inspect more of the defect, and of course also to calibrate the colorimeters. So when you look at smaller users, I would generally say if you're only going to do a display occasionally, you're probably better off with a spectrometer.
Okay.
Because it's, for an individual user, slightly easier to hold, because you're sort of referring to an absolute truth for whatever that's worth, right? If you're going to do like more volume work, you're probably much easier off with a colorimeter, and you might also have a spectrometer to keep your reference going. Sure.
So a spectrometer, I always say spectroradiometer, but I know there's a lot of people have different ways. So with a spectrometer, someone calibrating a single display, not worried about their time, but having that level of truth. Yeah. So even if it takes that extra time to calibrate, you can use that spectrometer. But if you're in that speed game and you want to move quickly and you want to get through things,
or you have like a large sequence of patterns you want to check, right? I mean, certainly if there's a lot of grayscale or dark, low luminance values in there, I mean, then you're going to gain substantial amounts of time with a colorimeter versus a spectrometer.
People building like 1D LUTs, 3D LUTs, large data sets, doing those correction
we have a customer who does like this whole range of tests on displays, and with a spectrometer it would take 6 to 10 minutes. With the colorimeter, he's done like 3-4 minutes. When you do one display, what would you care? But if you're doing millions of displays in a production line, that definitely makes a difference.
So we talked a little bit about the filters and the custom in-house engineering and design you're doing there. Are there any other like key selling points, key advantages you really pride yourselves on against the industry, of why an Admesy probe is so unique and so sought after?
What we try to do, and we try to offer it to all the customers, and there I think, for example, the AV customers can benefit a little bit from the large-scale consumer electronics guys. So what we try to do is we build something as accurate as possible. Right? So you get a device which is as fast as possible, accurate as possible, and then offer it for a very competitive price. And so we let the smaller users sort of lift in on the volumes we do in the consumer electronics. And I think from a price quality perspective, we always try to be number one. But definitely not just on the price. Just first reach that like really, really high-end measurement, and then just offer it at a competitive price.
So when you're balancing, so let's say you're trying to manage the level of capability of a meter against the price target you're trying to hit. That's how you're doing. You're taking advantage of those larger customers at the factory, doing these massive installs and massive calibrations, and then scaling that technology down for someone like myself or one of our users to be able to buy an Admesy probe and get that level of innovation in that lower cost.
Yeah, you'll might buy one, but there's another guy who buys 100, and we basically consider that to be 101. So you sort of get a 100 plus discount.
Volume goes up.
Only buying one.
Sure. So I know that in my own work, I use a spectroradiometer and I use a colorimeter, and I'm often building a custom meter profile for the display I'm trying to measure. So I always have that source of truth, as you were talking about, with that speed of the colorimeter, because time is money. I want to work quickly. I want to get into my client's place. I want to get out of my client's place. I want them to have the time to work. I heard a rumor that you have a jig that you can actually do meter profiling where you swap out the spectro with the colorimeter and you actually measure the exact same spot on the screen when you build your meter profiles. Can you talk a little bit about
that? Yeah, we've like in our own production lines, we always have exactly the same issues, obviously. So we're used to making these little jigs to move everything to the correct place, and then the reference spectrometer steps in, and then the colorimeter steps in. And so we asked the guys from production for the AV users, which is basically like, could you make it easy for them? And so they designed a very simple jig. You put in the spectrometer, you do your reference, you take it out, you put in the colorimeter. The jig is constructed in such a way that it's exactly in the same spot. So you get your reference correctly, and then you can just continue with the colorimeter, just as a little bit of an extra accessory or a feature, or just to make life easy.
Okay, and so you don't have to worry about any uniformity on the panel. You don't have to worry about any polarization that might happen if you're not measuring the exact same spot.
As long as you don't move the jig, you're in exactly the same spot.
And is this available on your website today?
It'll not be available yet, but it's going to be available in about a month.
In about a month, okay. And that'll work with both these new probes and the current probes that you've been selling?
Yeah, it's designed to work with all our probes.
Okay, that's great. And then, so you talked about the manufacturing, and you talked about how that's scaled up over the years for yourself. So where do you see your market? Like, where do you see your users? Are they mostly in manufacturing? Are they mostly like people like me running around calibrating? Is it
what we see is like the volumes are obviously in manufacturing, right? Like a display factory, it's huge. And so of course, but that's like one user who needs like hundreds of systems. But what we see is that as the quality of the displays goes up, and then and the lower luminance levels go, they're getting achieved, and so you see much more people caring about the actual performance of that display, and so we see like huge volumes in the manufacturing side, but a huge amount of users outside of it, where people say like, hey, I bought this and I want it to be perfect, and I have multiple displays and I want to be fully identical, and so I want to check my display more regularly because maybe it drifts over time, right? And so users are getting more and more critical. Rightfully so.
We see that, yeah.
And so we think that there's like two things in the markets. Obviously, the manufacturers, they will continue testing, because the more critical the user is, the more complaints they get if they don't. But at the other side, the users will get more and more into saying like, hey, this is a nice display, but I want to make it a perfect display.
I feel as though, there's this sort of weird spot in the industry where, when you had TV, in the 80s when I was growing up, you had the TV and you had the interlaced video, and people bought a TV and it was more just watching about the consumption and not so much as the experience. We started to see home theater grow, but it was sort of like, well, the TV's only so good. Why am I going to put so much into it? The picture doesn't look great if I blow it up to 10 feet, right? And then we had line doublers and scalers come in. But as we start getting higher fidelity with our content, even on our phones, our laptops, the quality of streaming content, the quality of Ultra HD Blu-ray, and some of these sources, now people are like, well, the quality is so good, I really want the experience to match. Yeah. So we're seeing here at Portrait, we're seeing a lot of customers want to calibrate TVs more than ever, which is kind of interesting because as the technology gets really good, you hear people say, oh, TVs just look so great now, but they could look better and they could look more accurate and true to that creative intent, and they want to chase it more. Whereas I remember CRTs walking into people's homes and you'd see the convergence out and I'd be like, how can you watch this? And they're like, it's a TV, that's how I watch it. And I'd be blown away by that.
But I mean, we're both old enough to remember, and probably a lot of people out there are no longer that old.
Sure.
But like, you bought your TV and you were adjusting the brightness and the contrast and the colors for like half an hour to an hour, and then at some point you sort of gave up and said like, well, this is it for my TV. Yeah. It also had a lot to do with what you say that, I mean, you got the signal was not clean and so So there was a lot ruining the experience, not just being the TV side, right? And then they went to digital image, obviously, which is already solving that a little bit, and then the resolutions get up and you get to HDR, et cetera, et cetera. So now you get like, okay, the content is capable of being shown to this full experience. The hardware, the TV side, is capable of showing you that full experience. So now you want to match it. I think anybody who went, like if you would now buy a CRT TV and then you put your latest OLED or QLED or whatever next to it, you go like, wow, what a difference, right? For many years we were happy that we had colors on the TV, right?
Yeah.
But now you go like, if you see that jump now, you go like, this is a totally different experience watching the movie, playing the game, or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, it's really come a long way, and it's just funny how I just find it fascinating. The fidelity gets better, and then we chase even better.
Yeah.
But when the fidelity is low, we're like, write it off a little bit, even though it could be better. But we,
Yeah, so, but I think it really made sort of a substantial jump, and now it's worth it. Now the difference is huge now.
Okay, so. Why did Admesy, we've started working together very recently. We now have the Admesy colorimeters in our Calman Studio product. We have the Admesy spectroradiometers now coming in our Calman Ultimate product. Why did Admesy want to work with Calman? What was the motivation?
Basically because we're lazy.
Because we're what?
We're lazy.
Oh, lazy.
No,
lazy.
I mean,
okay.
we like our traditional users. We come from the factory side, as you know, right? Our traditional users, they go like, we'll build our software, right? You just give us a good device, we'll operate it. We started there. We started moving into the more the AV side of the market, and we just looked around and said like, hey, there's good software out there. We don't need to be making that. I can spend several years trying to build software similar to Calman, but why would I?
Sure.
Right? We're the experts in the hardware, right? You're the experts in the software, and that's a perfect match. So that's why we said like, hey, we want to be part of that Calman group to offer those users like our devices.
Well, we appreciate it. We're very happy we have the Admesy probes now integrated into Calman. We look forward to integrating more of these probes into Calman. And it's interesting, you started very much on the factory side, and I can't really speak too much to Portrait Space. It's been around a long, long time, and I'm very new here, but on the Calman side, Calman really started out, the creators of Calman started out as enthusiasts. They started out as those users who were building a tool to calibrate their own home theaters and their own displays, and that's sort of where the Calman product had come from. And now that's sort of scaled up the other way, where Calman technology is starting to be used in factories and on factory lines in some of our partners. So it's interesting. You kind of went one way in the industry, and we kind of came the other way with at least the Calman product line. One of the great things about having Admesy probes integrated into Calman is our users that love to use these higher end probes that have significant speed are now able to leverage these probes. And so things like making gamut ring adjustments, over 600 measurements to measure gamut rings you can do in Calman. You can do LUTs with our Aurora color engine. You can do saturation sweeps and color checker charts really, really fast. And it's also super easy to use. In fact, why don't we take a moment and I'll show our audience how we connect to an Admesy probe, and maybe we can run through a few measurements and show them some of that speed.
Yeah, cool.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, cool.
All right, let's do that. So let me launch Calman here. With Calman launch, I'm going to come over here to the menu, and I'm going to come down to Open Workflow Template. And as our users can see here, there's a bunch of workflows here. We actually have a toolkit here for meter profiling. So a user that wants to create a meter profile that might have one of your spectroradiometers and colorimeters, they're able to use our own software to build the profile inside of Calman. I know that they can also build the profile inside of your own software as well, but it just gives more variety for customers who want to work inside Calman when they're calibrating certain situations. So let's come up here to Analysis, and I'm going to come over to the SDR Toolkit. We'll launch our SDR Toolkit workflow. I'm going to disconnect from the Admesy probe, and we'll show you how you connect. So if you're disconnected from the Admesy probe, you're going to want to select on the simulated meter here in the top right, select Find Meter, and then make sure Admesy meters are selected, and press search. Now you'll want to make sure you have the driver on your computer system for the Admesy products, but once you do, it's that simple. You're already connected inside of Calman. If you happen to have other meter profiles on the Admesy probe, you're able to select them here under the meter mode, and then you're ready to go. So let's take a moment and let's measure a color checker. We're connected now to patterns for the iPad OS here, and we've got the probe set up. And keep in mind, we are in a studio. We do have a lot of light here, and it's not really a laboratory grade environment, but we'll be able to make some measurements here on the iPad with patterns. It's running over the network connection, but I'm going to set the delay to 0.25 seconds. I don't know if this is going to work over the Wi-Fi, but let's do it because we know that the speed of the probe is extremely fast. So we'll set that to 0.25, and then let's take a read series of the color checker. Okay, wow, that seemed pretty quick. I do notice that we had a couple hiccups with patterns in the network trying to change the patterns, but for the measurements, they did seem to go very, very fast. I'm very impressed with this. It also looks like I might need either a recalibration on my iPad, or the lights are definitely throwing some variability in here, since we do have a lot of lights here in the studio that are reflecting off this screen. I do have, though, like one more question. And it's a little selfish, but can you maybe tell us a little bit about the future of where this light measurement industry is going to go? And will I finally get a spectroradiometer at an affordable price that can measure as fast and low as a colorimeter, so I can just carry one probe? What do you think?
My engineers are probably gonna kill me if I promise you anything.
Okay.
But yeah, like from our side, we get that question often.
Okay.
Like, that people do want to see some spectral values, and they like the speed of the colorimeter, and the color accuracy from a color point perspective is fine. But people want to see some spectral data as well. And we are working on actually even improving the next step, where we're working on different sensor technology to sort of move into a position where you get like high-end spectrometer, high-end colorimeter kind of combination going. But it's definitely a couple of years away. Okay. So they're going to shoot me if I promise to give you one soon. But I think somewhere in the future, yeah, definitely. In the meantime, I think that the colorimeters, they are color point wise, they're very good. And so maybe your need for that extra spectral value might also decrease over some time.
I just love the idea of never having to worry about a meter profile again. You know, never having to worry about that correction table to say, I know this is perfectly aligned for this display technology. Yeah. No, you just pull out the tool and go, but not lose the time. Yeah. And that's like the holy grail of what we're looking for.
It is the holy grail.
Yeah.
And that's why I say my engineers would definitely kill me if I say a full yes.
Okay.
But I'm pretty confident we can reach it.
Well, I'm hoping we're going to keep the show going so we can be here for him to announce it in a few more years. Maybe, yeah. Let's hope for that. So, well, thank you so much, Steven, for coming all the way from the Netherlands. I appreciate it. Thank you for being on the show. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you on the next one.